Good afternoon and good morning to those of you that have joined us from overseas. Really excited about today's session. We're going to be looking at what the 2026 expectations or trends that we should look out for. I think, I don't know if all of you will agree, but 2025 has been an interesting year. We've still got a few weeks left, so who knows what may happen. I think we've seen all sorts of things from political changes, trade deals and rules, shifting government policies. And I think that's caused some uncertainty. And unfortunately, I think payroll has been affected with those as well. So payroll and HR, shall I say, have had to keep on top of it. So what will happen to 2026? So before we start, let's introduce today's presenters. Pedro, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. Hi, I'm Isidro Helder. I came on board with Globally earlier this year as the Chief Revenue Officer. I'm actually a lawyer from background, so very strange to have a lawyer in a payroll conversation. But around 15 years ago, I became commercial director for a outsourcing company, and that's where I got in touch with payroll. Very fascinated about the journey that we had, and learned a lot about payroll, doing a lot of international payroll deals. And I started my own company a couple of years ago, venture capital backed international expansion company. Then I exited, got a new company that I sold into Globally. So here I am as the Chief Revenue Officer and focusing a lot on the global payroll across all those countries where we have our solutions.
And Rajesh, can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Melanie. Rajesh, I joined Globally just like Isidro earlier in the year. I'm the CTO at Globally. Prior to that, I spent some time in Dayforce running their global engineering organization across the world with all the product lines. And then prior to that, I've spent some time in this industry. So, the usual big name or big brands in this industry, such as SAP. I spent some time in SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, for those who, we were talking about older software earlier. And of course, I'm quite excited with Globally and what we're trying to achieve here. So looking forward to having this conversation.
Well, I mean, you're doing some fantastic things at Globally, and at the end of today's session, we've got a demo next week with you guys.
Yeah.
So I'll just ensure that I put that slide up. So if anybody wants to join us next week, they can do that with the QR code. But you guys have got some really interesting experience. And I said, I love it that you're from a lawyer background, because I've met a few that have, should I say, fallen into the payroll industry. And I think that I think when you look at people that have been lawyers in the past and then they work in the payroll industry, it really does work, like the skill sets. And you can sort of tell as well that you have had some training.
Yeah.
You can really
it's
tell.
All connected, I said. Yeah.
All the compliance and everything. Yeah. So, okay, so we'll just start off with the big picture. When you look back at sort of 2025, what stood out for you both, really, the biggest shift in payroll? Obviously, I started with a bit of doom and gloom, but was any of that sort of apparent to either of you?
Yeah, I think, if you look at 2025, the two letters that come up in every kind of event that I've attended over the past year is all AI. AI. Everybody wants to know, what can you do with AI? You get beautiful presentations about the possibilities of what AI can do, and some companies say that they already do it, and others, especially on the payroll side, people are getting worried, like, all right, what does it actually mean for me? So there's a lot of debate going on. There's on one side the AI side, and the other side is, because of that debate, a lot of people are now, I see it's more important, the payroll space. So especially when you look at where payroll used to be 20 years ago, it's just a nuisance for companies to, payroll needs to be done, people need to be paid. And now it's more gearing towards kind of a strategic alliance with the other business units inside of companies, because there's so much data and so much information that is now available through the payroll that it has become a much more important role inside of the kind of the global business. So I think that those are the two shifts that I've seen with this year. I see also there's a lot of globalization going on. There's a lot of kind of what started during COVID, where people were working abroad, the employer record boom. We see that now also reflecting inside of the payroll space, that more companies are thinking truly global of hiring their talent across the globe, and that kind of that trend that really gets stronger also in the past year.
Yeah, Rajesh, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think to build on what Isidro said, I think in the past, this whole globalization was the territory of large enterprises and large organizations. Now that's starting to trend into more startups and mid-market. I think it started with the whole, with COVID, all the digitization and remote working and go where talent was. I think that even the smaller organizations have now started to adopt that model, which means that there is a pressure on the payroll and HR systems now to cater for even small to medium businesses in this space, which is our sweet spot. But it's kind of what large systems used to offer with complex HR functions now have to be simplified and offered to these kind of businesses as well. So that's an interesting trend, not just this year, but it has, it's led up to this year. The other things that I should be talking about AI all the time, but I'm going to refrain. I'll go into it more. But I think the other thing is that with this pressure means that if it's global payroll, then how do you pay these people globally? So there is this whole shift towards real-time payment, all the SEPAs and the FedNows and others that are coming up. So it's putting a different kind of pressure on all your payroll systems and payment infrastructure. So there is a big confluence between employment models, payments, and payrolls all coming together, which is starting to create an interesting space for us. And this is kind of what you keep focusing on the space, but I think this is actually a fantastic shift that's happening.
Well, it's good to see that some people have joined us from all over the world. So if you do want to put in your comment box where you've come from, it'd be great to see. And also if you have any questions, and also do you agree? Do you agree that the globalization, AI, they're the key topics for 2025? It would be really good to hear from you on that. And actually, I will say, with the the COVID times, I know we try not to talk about COVID, but actually had such a big impact. Yeah. I think with regards to software and globalization, I think people thought, okay, maybe it will just be one of those things, just a short-term thing. But you're right, it's carried on growing, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you start to see now governments starting to force people back to work. This is a big topic here in Canada. It was the first thing I opened today in the newspaper. So I think this trend is shifting, but nevertheless, for small to medium businesses, they have realized the operational efficiency that they get with this remote workforce, being able to tap talent, which otherwise would not be accessible to them without a very sophisticated infrastructure. So I think that this will continue. There will be some sort of a hybrid we will settle in as we go, but this will continue, and this will put some interesting spin on how HR systems are managed, how people are managed with pay transparency and other stuff that's coming up as well. So it's going to be quite interesting, I think.
Go on, sorry.
No, also exactly about this hiring people abroad, global workforce. In some countries, the salaries are getting very, very high for tasks that you can easily get for half the price somewhere else. And that has opened the door for other countries to have real talent for them, a much higher pay. So it equalizes kind of the wealth around the world, but also it reduces some of the costs that some of the companies have, especially in the Western countries where some of the salaries are extremely high. Gives them the opportunity to really, really have good talent, and they integrate it well through teams, through kind of the remote workforce, and then you have on the back end the way that they pay. So those are things that people couldn't do, let's say 10 years ago, which really is happening now.
And you're right, because it's really opened up the workforce, hasn't it? So if you're looking for engineers, but you can't find an engineer in a certain country, then, there is a pool of engineers in another country. So not only is it to do with cost, but it's also to do with skill set. That really has changed. So do you think that will just carry on growing in 2026? Do you think AI and the staffing issues and everything else is going to carry on growing. Are these the trends you predict for next year? Rajesh, do you want to go first?
No, absolutely. I think it is going to start. It's going to continue. AI is starting to, it's starting to move a little bit away from a hype perspective into more and more embedded in technology. I think we saw this with the internet coming in 2000 for some of us who were in that trend when we started talking about how it's going to replace all the libraries and all the schools and all, and so on. So we are also going through the same sort of a cycle right now of initial adoption of this technology, the wow moment, and then the reality moment, as I call it. So we will progress more and more into reality. But I think the bigger trend for me is going back to the earlier point, is that if you have a remote workforce, if you have a global workforce, as a small to medium businesses, there is no way that you can operate with multiple vendors. You need unified platforms now. We internally, we always refer to this as a single glass pane to see their entire workforce, and we need to bring that type of technology up front. So the interesting trend, these trends will continue. Right? These trends will continue. It will only grow bigger and bigger as payment complexity starts to come in with instant payment and access to earned wages, which is another topic in itself that's brewing out there. We are living in an age of instant gratification. So the earned wage, people need access to it, and so last few years, there have been big trends in calculating earned wages and trying to figure out rails to deploy this. And I'm a previous employer, I spent a lot of time figuring that one out. But now with all the RTP and instant payments and stuff like that, that's being more and more freely available and becoming the standards now. So these connections will start to emerge, and this trend will carry on, I think. I don't know, Isidro, if you see it the same way.
No, absolutely. No, totally. I think what definitely is going to change through AI, whether it's fully integrated with a lot of payroll companies or not, we're really building AI as the foundation of our company, because we strongly believe in that evolution. I think where we will see also is kind of the changes for payments and data being readily available, because you used to have to wait until the end of the month and then you only get your data then. But now, because the data is updated so quickly, you can actually do those payroll processes and updates during the month. And that what happens is that people want to have access to it. So payments will have to follow. So it's not only getting paid at the end of the month, but you actually want to get paid during the month. And I think those trends will definitely continue to go.
And I think it's really interesting because I would say, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago when we've run some of our events, it was a big thing, earned wage access or daily pay. And then it's a huge thing with AI and, it's going to destroy payroll and then you're not going to have a job anymore. And, all of this big hype. But what I think has happened in 2025, and guys, tell me if you disagree, but I feel like the hype has quietened. But the actual solutions are now coming into play a bit more. So they didn't have the big impact that everyone thought or was discussing in the industry. I feel like it's slowly moving in now, and people are adopting earned wage access, and people are maybe not scared of AI so much now. They see it as a benefit. So carry on.
Yeah, I think you're right, Melanie. You've seen this with all technology trends when they come in. It's almost like everything's going to change. And there's this uncertainty that people, that leads us into our own dark areas. But I think the real reality of this here right now is that we are past that wow moment. At the end of the day, AI is a pattern matching engine. It's in steroids. But the reality of this is that, we built our entire platform based on AI. We work on 3 vectors. We work on compliance intelligence. We work on human intelligence. We work on payroll intelligence. These are like our 3 vectors based on which we have built our architecture. But at the end of the day, what that means is that it's providing the intelligence. It's providing the augmentation that's needed. It becomes more and more an augmenting tool. The only thing I really fear from this is the entry level, more simpler tasks can now be ascend to an agent model. We can produce agents to do those kind of tasks. But at the end of the day, in this arena of payroll and dealing with humans, there has to be a human in the loop kind of processes that are built. So there's always this, it's kind of like the air gap in the internet world. There's an air gap between what it brings out to how what gets embedded into the technology. So you're a bit away from the autonomous side of things, but yeah, it's going to be the table stakes, as we call it here in this part of the world, as part of the game.
Yeah, so Isidro, well, Rajesh, you mentioned compliance.
Yes.
So obviously, we've talked heavily the first part of today really about technology, but I think over the last few years, regulations have changed tremendously, haven't they? What trends are you seeing already gaining momentum sort of within payroll and payments?
Right. Maybe Isidro, you can start. You're on European side of house.
as a lawyer back in the old days, compliance and legislation, I'm obviously that picks my eye, right? My interest. I think we had these massive change in GDPR in the past years. I think that kind of the dust has settled. Most of the payroll companies will have that fully integrated in the payroll processes. Also, companies have integrated that as much as possible. So that was a major shift, a major kind of burden. Now what we see is still that kind of data and data privacy is extremely important, especially when we use this AI, because who knows where the data is stored, right? So as, let's say, large companies, they have it all solid and all worked out through all their processes, but especially the scale-up companies, mid-sized companies, they don't have that kind of bandwidth to build something really solid. So they acquire technology and they still want to play around with AI. And that's where kind of, I think the data privacy and kind of an understanding where we'll go with that AI information goes. I think that's one of the trends. And then another part is the pay transparency and equality. And those are the things that still, I mean, for years, there has been a flow into that direction, but it has been so challenging to actually implement this equality of pay. And that is gender, background. I mean, I live in a world where I don't see that from my perspective, but it's so heavily integrated in so many companies. It's just the way that people think, and it's not something that is easily built out because you have a policy. You actually need to implement it, and that is something that I think I see more and more questions from online. I see questions in events. People actually now say, well, now it's really time to make that change. And that will have an impact. A lot of the salaries have grown differently, and that will have to be corrected. How do you correct it? Do you decrease the salary? Is that legally possible? So there's a lot of things that are happening that I think for the next years will have to be implemented. It's not going to be from one day to another, but I do feel that there is a flow that it's generally accepted that we need to make that change, and that comes along with legislation.
Yeah, I think it's bizarre as a woman. I feel it's bizarre that we're talking about pay transparency in 2025. However, it is an important conversation. But with the pay transparency that's due next year, what we're finding is that a lot of people aren't prepared for it. Like, especially in payroll. Payroll needs to have a seat at the table because you're going to be the guys that are going to be running the reports and providing the data. And I just don't see enough organisations ready. We've got 7 months before that goes live in June 2026. So, Isidro, you might have a lot of people asking globally to help them out on the data side. Panic.
Yeah, one side is the data, and that's now more and more companies thinking about global, right? They used to think about country by country, and now you think about global, because these kind of policies and kind of processes need to be set up globally. Then one part is the payroll part, and the other part is the human part, right? People need to explain also why there are differences, or try to explain that there are differences, and that you're gonna put it all in the balance again. So it's a human, that's an HR, a real HR function that comes along. So payroll and HR will have to work very closely together this year to make it really happen.
Yeah. And Rajesh, what are you seeing from your side of the world?
Yeah, no, it's kind of build up on what Isidro and you've been talking about. There's, US started to do pay transparency last year, I think. with California and so on, and started to roll out. Now it's going into EU. So which means that the HR systems now need to hold a lot more clean data about people, job, pay, all the dimensions of this data. So that's an interesting thing in the from an application and technology point of view as we start to build this out. But I think there is another aspect to this as well that people, most of the HR and payroll systems till now have been built with more what is needed. Statutory reporting, just basic HR reporting, ability to look through your data. But really, especially payroll systems have been more focused on calculation and adoption of all these compliances and the effect of those compliances on the calculation. This year and going forward, I think we're going to get more and more interesting reporting needs. So these systems have to now combine this data and produce reporting, which allow you to satisfy some of these compliance and directives that you're getting, transparency directive you're getting. So I think what I'm coming down to is 2026 is shaping up to be more intelligence, reporting intelligence, and the types of reporting that's going to be needed are going to be more ad hoc in nature, not prescribed reporting as in the past, prescriptive reporting as in the past. So it's quite interesting. We have actually taken a very different approach to reporting, and we said we'll turn loose our AI engine on reporting, as long as we are able to contain it within the roles and permissions of what that person is able to see in terms of data. Our whole reporting, at least from a technology perspective, has been is that you won't be able to predict what kind of data that your customers want, but you can give them the tool that allows them to traverse through the entire data lake and produce the reports that they want. So I think that's what's going to be more important, practical coming up in 2026.
And that's a really important comment that you've made, because I think, again, about 4 years ago, we ran a survey and we asked the payroll community, like, how long did it take for you to get reports? Yeah. So some of it was instant, some of it was a day. And then we had anything up to 2 or 3 weeks, obviously, where they might be using ICPs or whatever. And it would be amazing to run a survey next year or the year after to actually see the difference in how quickly people are now, because it's so important to have, COVID again, sorry, going back to COVID, that was a massive highlight, wasn't it, of how quickly we needed to get reports from payroll and HR data.
Yeah, no, it is going to be. And the compliance changes for us as being a global platform vendor, going across multiple countries, the compliance requirements are different and the transparency requirements are different from country to country. The level of accessibility to data is different, like Isidro said, GDPR here, and then various evolving standards and data requirements. So I think to say one size fits all is probably not possible. What we could do, though, is give the tools and then make it intelligent so that it can actually, you can ask the question. This is where AI really shines. It's able to look at a pattern of data, bring you the pattern, match it, and then produce a result in a natural language that's consumable by everybody, right?
So actually, my next question, really, let me just show you a comment, because I have to show that. So Stuart has been on a few of our symposiums, and he's our pay transparency guy. So I've learned a lot from him. So he agrees we need payroll on at the table when we're talking about pay transparency. So thanks, Stuart, for getting involved there. But going back to AI, so what do you think we're actually going to see next year? Like, so instead of all the hype,
what's practical?
What's real?
Because, like, can I be honest with you? Maybe too honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like that cynical, grumpy person. I'll be sitting on a panel, or I'll be sitting in the audience, and everyone will be like, "Yeah, AI, blah blah blah," and I'm like, "I haven't seen it. It's not going to happen." Like that whole hype. So realistically, what do you reckon is going to happen in the next 12 months on AI? Like real, no BS. What's going to be the real thing that we're going to see in the payroll community?
I can start with what we are working on, and so at least I know that's real. No, but I think from a trends perspective, I think we saw last year everything to do with how the chatbots of the world, which are intelligent now. It can look at your HR data. It can look at your payroll data, answer questions. How many leave days do you have in Malaysia? To those kind of things, which I think is most of the software are already there. They were there with chatbots, and then it got very quickly rebranded to AI. So all these AI agents and chatbots, and I'm being quite honest and as cynical as you are probably right now on this. So that got branded, and that was the Gen 1 of how I would say we used AI. It's the power of the generative language that it had command over. We leveraged it very well. Where we're trending towards this year is going to be more, at least from my perspective and what we are working on, is handling of anomalies, deduction of things in payroll which does not look good. Something's deviated from our thresholds that we are setting. And what is the intelligence behind why is this threshold change? So all of that's going to get embedded into our workflows and how we look at it. And it pretty much falls out in the vector of payroll intelligence that we are trying to drive. And then the whole concept of, if you look at any payroll vendor, and my personal experience of at least being part of teams of 3 or 4 vendors, it's always about explain the payslip. So there's always this explain the payslip in plain language that I understand. If I would challenge every vendor out there, but probably 30, I would almost go up to 60 to 70% of questions that come into the vendor are your payroll teams. When I say vendor here, your payroll teams is really about explaining the payslip. So I think this is where AI kind of plays a big part in how do you give it enough information and traceability in how you calculated these payslips, and how can you expose that in natural language so you can actually make this transparent to quote unquote humans in the chain. So I think that's the important thing that's going to come out. Like I said, there are a lot of companies, including us, who are working off this whole copilot notion or agent notion, where they're simplified tasks that we could have an agentic frameworks handle that in the background. So that is real, and that's continuing to happen. I think everybody in this space is now announcing agents as one of those features that are coming in. What I'm not sure we are ready for yet, and the technology maturation is still not there. At the end of the day, we need to understand that AI is still fuzzy logic based. It's not based on static logic. So, which means that the result it produces could vary based on how you ask the question. So in simple terms, so fully autonomous or unsupervised payrolls, replacing domain experts, all that stuff is a bit far-fetched in my view at this point in time. Will we get there? We may eventually get there, but it's still going to involve a human in the loop process, especially given that it's many people that you're dealing with. So that's at least my view on this.
What do you think from the lawyer point of view? Are we there? What are we going to see with AI? Are we there with compliance for AI? Can we trust it?
Oh no! So I still have one leg in the lawyer world, right? So I see a lot of law firms really having struggles. Like you can use AI for all the simple stuff, like NDA preparations, agreement preparations, reviews, all that stuff. Like that's not going to be with junior lawyers anymore. You can use AI already. When you extrapolate that and pull that into the payroll space, there will be a lot of manual work that will be taken out. So we've built, for example, 50 standard reports that you can run, whether you have 10 employees or 1,000 employees or 20,000 employees. The more actually AI can run through all of that and extrapolate all the data and run the reports. And like 2 years ago, it was impossible to do. Yeah. So I think the AI is really, really coming in handy because it facilitates, makes the process easier. I think where we as legislation would, when that comes along, I mean, there's a EU directive where, it's going to be very strict. What is AI actually doing? Are you going to have an AI running the payroll and paying the people? Then there's no human interaction. We don't trust that yet. Maybe that's something for the future, but you need to heavily regulate that as well, because otherwise you don't know what's going to run on with your payroll. And then suddenly people are there's a mistake in the AI or something happens, then who's to blame? right? So I think the regulations will still try to put it more under control so that we have a controlled environment. And as it proves itself to become better and stronger, then you can automate more processes. But until that moment, we use it day in, day out for all the reports that we're driving. So the AI, the agentic AI, is all stuff that we are integrating in what we do, but with the human layer on top.
And it's interesting because I got really excited when everyone else was excited about AI, and I asked somebody to build an AI bot for us, and unfortunately, people have heard this story so many times. But his name was Bob, and he got sacked because he was terrible. However, I've got it was really bad, but it was a really good. It was a really good example of seeing something go bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, so to actually see the real world of actually it's not as simple as what you think it is to build something new. So we have got a new bot, and I would say it's like a glorified library assistant. And it's weird because it's got personality. I just never expected the AI to actually have a personality. So I'll demo that, in the future. But we've talked a lot about data and technology.
Yeah.
What investments should payroll leaders prioritize? Do you think they need to really look at investing in technology, AI, or is it we haven't spoken so much about the human element? Do we need to look at different types of people involved in the department? What should they be prioritizing, do you think?
If I can jump in, I think you have to look at it as like augmentation technologies for our payroll teams, which means you need people who are willing to change and people willing to adopt these technologies. When I went to university, I was told I cannot use calculator. I had to use logbooks to calculate, right? So you come out of the university, you're the only one probably will carry a logbook to calculate. Yeah. But are you faster? Probably not. And are you going to get, you will never be successful and have the same pace as somebody else using a calculator. So the point that I'm trying to make is that look at it as another technology that's in your tool bag. And as payrolls professionals and people using payroll systems, it's basically an augmentation technology, and it gets more and more sophisticated as augmentation, any augmented technology does, and purpose built as we start to build large language models, which is specific to your data, specific to your domain. It will become more and more sophisticated. But at the end of the day, which should be treated as an augmentation technology, and you need to look for people who are willing to go down this path. And I think that's going to be the key.
Good point. Yeah, you need people that aren't going to say no. They're going to go, give it to me. Let's find out what we can do. Cedra, what do you think?
Yeah, it's like, remember when maybe I'm getting old. We used to work with faxes, right? You send a fax. When you have a payment that goes to the bank, goes through the fax and all that stuff. Then you got email. Wow, what's going to happen? My secretary is going to be out of a job. All that stuff. Well, that didn't happen. Like, we just get a bigger volume, right? You can do much more now with emails. It went so, I'd say, people are always afraid of change. I mean, I used to be afraid of change because what's going to happen to us, and is life still going to be the same? But as you consider that this actually facilitates, then people will take that on board. And then you will see that the payroll, when you do, I've done a lot of payroll projects for companies that do multiple countries, and they had local vendors everywhere, and they all have their own payroll system. Imagine how much time they spend on getting reports and harmonizing it and doing an upload. Now we have a platform. There's other people have also another platform. You have it all globally. You can consolidate it through the platform. They have so much more time. They can run. They need less people to run the same amount of work, and it's much more automated. And also you can do higher headcounts while you don't need all the additional integrations, because you can just run it from those reports. And that's where AI helps out. Once people really understand it and understand how to use that and utilize it, it will make their life easier. The other people that don't have that vision, they will come into the position at some point where they will say, well, we have 10 of you and one of them. What are we going to do, right? So I think it will be a shift of people understanding how to use it. And then, getting a bit more value, add more value. What we said before, right? Payroll used to be just running payroll. Now payroll can actually add more value to the business and explain how that works together with HR in the room with the employees. So it's going to be a little bit of a shift.
I think it's, I can see why people are apprehensive, but it is also an exciting time. We're all learning new skills. I know I certainly am, and I can imagine from a payroll person's perspective, it is all learning new skills and actually just thinking, do you know what, we've got to embrace it. Let's move forward and see how we can. So we have one client member who allows her team an hour a week just to learn something new. You know how busy payroll is.
Yeah.
I think that's so important, isn't it? Just have 1 hour a week and learn something new. And I think if we could all start trying to embrace that, I think it also move the payroll industry forward as well. So we're coming towards sort of a bit of an actually, I've really enjoyed today's conversation. I feel like it's a bit of a geek off, hasn't it? We've all been really with it, so it's been fantastic. So I think I know the answer to this, but anyway, I will ask you. Looking ahead, what excites you both the most about where payroll is heading in 2026 and beyond? Cedro, do you want to start?
Yeah.
2026 and beyond. I think the part of and beyond is going to be really, really exciting. I think what happened this year was a lot of talking about AI. A lot of people also asking, what does it actually mean for us? Is it real? Does it really work? And all that stuff. I think now in 2026, you see a couple of also global payroll providers that actually have implemented it and that they make those lives easier for payroll people, payroll organizations, let's say. So the technology, I think, even if you don't implement like the full agentic AI, but different elements, that will already help. So I think the technology will be a really good facilitator, especially for whenever companies are doing international payroll, to understand local modalities. Let's say where you used to work with a bit more expensive payroll vendors because they have the local knowledge and they have offices all over the world, you can now work with more integrated solutions where you can do it, let's say, from even you don't have to be a let's say 50,000 employee company and have a very big payroll team to run a payroll. You can do it much easier. You can do it with a scale up that just wants to hire 1 or 2 or 3 people abroad. Everything will be more accessible for the people. So I think what I see for 2026 will be kind of local going global. And that's also the vision that I had in my previous companies. I really want to make sure that, the local people have the possibility to be part of something global, but also that the companies are able to tap into local talent around the world. And that's something that I see happening because the payroll process will become more regulated. But if you work with the right partner, it becomes accessible for everyone. And I think that's where I get very enthusiastic.
Rajesh.
Yeah. To build on what Isidro said, at globally at least, we are trying to build a global payroll infrastructure which is intelligent. Payroll of the past was always about back-end function of getting the payout and paying people accurately. I think that's changing because it's no longer just a cost center. This is going to provide intelligence around your human capital in the system, right? So especially if you look at it from a perspective of globalization, pay transparency, and looking at talent, going where talent is. If you put all of that together and then really understand, payroll no longer takes a back seat. Payroll takes the front seat in terms of your planning. It is part of your, it's not the system that just pays, I think. It's the system that's going to provide the intelligence for your business and how to configure your business, because majority of your businesses rely on the human capital to be successful. So to me, I think in 2026 and beyond, these platforms are going to go from back office functions to more forefront. And like Stuart said, have a front row seat in terms of design, comp designs, and your human capital designs around the world. So that's kind of where I think we are headed.
And I think I'm just going to put on this slide just to people, if you guys, as I mentioned earlier, we have a demo with globally, just so you can we've got a series of 3, so this is the first one. But if you want to join, if the QR code, I did test the QR code, so it should work. But if by any chance it doesn't work, the webinar is actually on our website. But also feel free to DM me and I can send you the link. But I think it's a really interesting, conversation we've had, and actually to see what you guys are achieving with globally. So it'd be really interesting. And I think one of the things that we haven't really spoken about is sort of like the employee experience, and everything that we have spoken to, the end result is a good employee experience, isn't it?
Yeah. No, employee experience is going to be part of it, because as soon as you say payroll transparency, who wants this information, and at the employee level. I mean, I think we touched on it from different angles, but I think really it comes down to payroll transparency. An employee feels good when they are treated fairly, and a lot of these systems and the initiatives that we are talking about basically boils down to an employee experience and how they're able to access that information. So I think employee experience is part and parcel of these conversations, and I don't think we can do without it. But to your point, Melanie, I think that's an important aspect of it as well.
I think as an employee, I struggled a lot with, you get your payslip through an email, sometimes by mail, right? But then it gets lost somewhere on the desk. That used to be the old days. Then you get it by email, then you get it by password. And some of these, like I get a password and it has changed all the time, so I can't really access it. It takes a lot of effort, and then you don't have access to it, or then you need to look on emails in the past again. So I think this is what we took into our platform. Like, it needs to be a seamless experience. You log in, we have single sign-on, very easy. You log in, you see your payslip, you can see all the past payslips. It needs to be very accessible for employees, and that's also a demand that we see in the market. There was more now than it was 10 years ago. At least 10 years ago, we always thought like, this is the way, right? There's no other way. But now with technology facilitating this, that means that they have access to their payslips, but also to their HR, and that all will be kind of a self-service. And that's the way that we have to go forward, and that's what the employees demand, and rightfully so. So I think that's something that will also, for other companies, will also be a very important part. Like, we have integrated this now, other companies will follow and will do the same.
The other dimension I do want to add, which I don't want to miss in this conversation, is at the end of the day, they want to be paid, and they want to be paid in a most convenient way, right? So we talked a little bit about earned wages. Earned wages combined with real-time payment suddenly opens up a whole new channel of, especially when you start to look at hourly workers and contingent workers and seasonal workers. This is important to them. How quickly that may make a difference between somebody working for you or not. So I mean, it's not a big deal when it comes to full-time employees. That's the trend I've noticed, at least whenever I've implemented these systems. Because we are on more structured pay. It's on a 15-month mortgage goes, 13th day of the month, the insurance goes. But when it's contingent and people who are living, almost day to day, this becomes very important. It's the social reason for it. It's a social obligation. I think so. With earned wages calculation becoming pretty much the backbone of how you do payroll, RTP and real-time payments becoming backbone of how you do. Sending it to the payment mechanisms, either a wallet or, we are talking countries where the currency fluctuates. So we need to go to a stable coin or things like that, which we do from a globally perspective. Those are all going to be the employee experience. That's part of the aspect of it, which we didn't talk about, but it's going to become very important as we start to go forward.
Well, I reckon we could do a whole session on just that, on that side. Maybe we'll speak to Rick for next year and get that in. But I think we come to an end today. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, are you happy for them to message?
Absolutely. Yeah. You're on LinkedIn, the easiest way to find us in the world.
That's the other side. Well, Cedro and Rajesh, thank you all the way from Canada. Cedro from Barcelona. We have a truly global presenters and audience today. But thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic Christmas and New Year, and then I hope to catch up with you all next year.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Melanie. Take care,
everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.